You know how much this means to me.
Mr. Malloy.
In Budapest, CIA Station Chief Ben Malloy is overseeing an operation to intercept intelligence being exchanged between a Turkish informant and Russian intelligence, led by the recently arrived Russian Station Chief, Yevgeny. The CIA agents pinpoint the Turkish mole, and Ben gives his team the green light to intervene. One of the agents poses as a Russian operative and collects the intel, but Yevgeny quickly catches on and orders his men to stop the CIA team. Despite the Russians' efforts, the agents manage to escape with the data. As Ben watches from nearby, Yevgeny acknowledges him, expressing regret that Ben isn't on his side. He even taunts Ben by revealing that he knows about his wedding anniversary dinner, having hacked into his communications. Yevgeny shares a brief moment of sentiment, admitting he lost his own wife because of his job and wishing Ben a happy anniversary before parting ways. Later, Ben buys a rose and meets his wife, Farah, who is also a CIA agent, to head out for their dinner. As she steps away to say goodbye to some friends, an explosion rips through the building, killing her instantly. Weeks pass, and Ben has stepped down from his role as station chief, unable to move on from Farah's death. He struggles to adjust to his new reality and attempts to call his son, Nick, an IT student, only to be met with voicemail. Meanwhile, in Croatia, Nick notices the missed call thanks to his girlfriend, Veronique, but hesitates to call back. He feels like he can't open up to his father about the changes in his life. Not long after, Ben is summoned for a debriefing. The Inspector General and other officials suggest that Farah might not have been who he thought she was. They show him a picture of a suspected Russian agent named Karen TOF, who is linked to the deaths of 2 NATO operatives and is known for destabilizing Western nations. Ben is puzzled until they ask if Farah was Karen's handler. Outraged, he refuses to believe it, arguing that Farah was fiercely loyal to the CIA. The officials ask if he's willing to take a polygraph test to prove his claims, and Ben, unwavering in his belief, agrees without hesitation. Ben feels like the Inspector General is deliberately trying to tarnish Farah's reputation, and his lawyer, Ted, agrees. The CIA's Deputy Director, Williams, reassures Ben that he's on his side. Encouraged by this, Ben begins to hope they can clear Farah's name. He refuses to believe that the woman he loved and built a life with could have been a traitor. However, Ted reminds him that at this point, everything is in the hands of the Inspector General. Disturbed by the accusations, Ben starts digging into the details of the explosion, looking for anything he might have missed. When he tries to access the CIA building, he finds his security clearance revoked. IT specialist Desmond, pretending not to know him, discreetly helps him get inside. He informs Ben that the Inspector General has restricted his access while the investigation is ongoing. Desmond, who respected Farah deeply, wants to help and pulls up records of international intelligence agencies that were present near the explosion site. One name stands out, Karen Taramov. However, Ben is certain the FSB wasn't involved, as Yevgeny doesn't operate that way. Desmond also runs a trace on Ben's laptop to check if anyone has been spying on him. Back home, Ben receives an anonymous email with articles about attacks worldwide and a cryptic note urging him to connect the dots. Shortly after, Nick calls him back. He finally admits that he has left France and moved to Croatia with Veronique. They make plans to meet in France, but the call suddenly drops. Determined to get answers, Ben decides to head back to Budapest. A flashback shows a moment between Ben and Farah at dinner, celebrating her promotion to station chief. They reminisce about the old days when the agency didn't approve of their relationship. Farah gives Ben a lucky charm passed down from her grandparents, telling him to keep it close as a symbol of her love. When Ben arrives in Budapest, he meets with his former partner, John Branca, who has taken over as station chief. Ben wants John's help in investigating Farah's death, convinced that something isn't right. However, John seems dismissive, telling Ben that there's not enough evidence to challenge the official report. He advises Ben to spend time with Nick and let the agency handle things. Sensing John's change in attitude, Ben thanks him but doesn't buy into his indifference. Ben then visits the now-abandoned restaurant where the bombing occurred. Memories of the explosion haunt him, but he refuses to give up. Since the CIA won't help, he turns to Hungarian intelligence chief Hitchens. Though hesitant at first, she eventually shares a smart ring that Farah was wearing when she died. She suspects Yevgeny's team hacked it to track Farah's movements, meaning they knew exactly where she would be that night. However, she isn't sure if Yevgeny himself was behind the attack. She gives Ben his current location and also hands over Farah's emergency funds, urging him to use them wisely. Meanwhile, Desmond contacts Ben with an alarming discovery. His laptop is infected with high-level spyware. He warns Ben that he's being tracked and should be extra careful. Ben locates Yevgeny at a casino and joins his poker game, flashing a large amount of cash to get his attention. Ben asks for information about Farah, but Yevgeny cryptically tells him that America's biggest enemy is its own reflection. He refuses to elaborate, reminding Ben that they're still on opposite sides. When Ben refuses to back down, Yevgeny's men step in to remove him. A brutal fight breaks out, with Ben taking down multiple opponents before he's finally overpowered at gunpoint and forced to surrender. Seeing Ben's determination, Yevgeny acknowledges that he's serious about finding the truth, but warns him that emotions are clouding his judgment. Before Ben can react, someone knocks him out. Meanwhile, in Croatia, Nick and Veronique are at home when she heads out for some shopping. As Nick settles into work, a group of armed men appears outside his house. One of them flashes a badge, claiming they're there to protect him from assassins tracking his movements. Unsure of what to do, Nick hesitantly follows them. Ben wakes up in a secure location, furious at Yevgeny, blaming him for destroying his life and taking Farah away from him. Yevgeny starts to realize that Ben is genuinely on a personal mission to clear Farah's name. Just when Ben thinks he's about to be executed, Yevgeny unexpectedly sets him free. Confused but determined, Ben insists that Yevgeny was behind Farah's death, but Yevgeny tells him he's wrong. He then shows Ben footage from the night of the bombing, revealing that Karen TOF was following Farah. Ben assumes Karen is FSB, but Yevgeny corrects him. Just as he is about to disclose the true mastermind, gunmen storm in and kill Yevgeny and his men. Ben barely manages to escape as bullets fly, but the attackers are hot on his trail. Ben manages to sneak into a van and quickly calls Branka, urging him to come help, crashing out of the building and flipping the vehicle. He crawls out, only to see armed men rushing toward him. Just in time, Branka pulls up and gets Ben out of there. Branka tells him he's lucky to be alive since FSB hit squads rarely fail. Ben is confused about how Branka got there so fast, and he finds out Branka had been tracking Ivy. Now, Ben is convinced that Farah was murdered and that he was framed, but he has no clue who's behind it. Branka advises him to lay low and takes him to a safe location. Meanwhile, Nick is traveling with agents who explain that a rogue FSB agent attempted to kill his father, and he's next on the hit list. Concerned for Veronique's safety, Nick is relieved when they assure him she's in a secure location. Back with Ben, Branka reveals that he had a team tracking Nick's phone and sent operatives to get him. He takes Ben to a large boat that serves as his base. There, Branka explains that the attackers were ex-Chinese mercenaries now working with the Wagner Group. They were after something they believe Ben has. Branka presses him, asking if Farah ever gave him anything before she died. Ben, growing suspicious, denies receiving anything. Instead, he asks to speak to Nick, and Branka leads him to a satellite phone. Meanwhile, Nick is taken to a building, but something feels off. Sensing danger, he attacks his two escorts and tries to escape, but they quickly overpower him and hold him at gunpoint. Back on the boat, Ben is led into a room, only to see the same hit squad waiting for him, guns drawn. Branka tells him to sit, and that's when it hits Ben. Branka has betrayed him. They strap him to a chair, preparing to torture him for information. Ben is stunned that a man he trusted for 8 years would turn on him. Branka, however, is only interested in one thing, whatever Farah left him. Ben insists that she only gave him a son, a home, and a life, but Branka doesn't buy it. Branka reminds Ben that he knows how much pain he can take, then starts sticking needles into his fingers. When Ben refuses to talk, Branka sends electric currents through his hands. Ben passes out, only to be jolted awake with smelling salts. He grits his teeth, refusing to break. Then, Branka gets news that Nick has arrived at the so-called safe house. He wonders if Nick can endure the same pain. Ben threatens to kill Branka if he touches Nick, but Branka leaves without a word. Another man steps in to continue the torture, and Ben recognizes him. It's Karen. Ben demands his name, saying he likes to know the names of the people he kills. Karen mocks him, claiming Americans aren't as powerful as they think. He brings up a story about how even the CIA's top leader was once captured and killed, just like the head of the KGB. The KGB, however, got revenge by kidnapping the terrorist leader's family and mailing back body parts until their man was released. Just as Karen prepares to start the torture, a sudden gunshot rings out. A Russian agent, Kristina Kalari, has infiltrated the boat, eliminating the guards. She frees Ben, but he's too weak to climb out the way she came in. They have no choice but to fight their way through. Kristina throws a flashbang and guns down a room full of mercenaries, but Karen manages to knock her overboard before turning his attention to Ben. Despite his injuries, Ben fights back. Their fight spills onto the deck, where Ben uses Karen's own weapon to stab him before knocking him into the water with a metal pipe. Ben and Kristina escape on her boat, heading to shore. Ben is unsure if he can trust her, but Kristina reminds him that she just killed 8 men to save his life. Kristina reveals that she was acting on Farah's orders. She asks Ben if he still has the pendant Farah gave him, revealing that it's actually a key. She offers to take him to an address. Then, she drops a bombshell. Nick's kidnappers are the same people who betrayed Farah. It turns out Farah was overseeing deep cover operatives and was about to blow the whistle on a massive money laundering scheme. She didn't tell Ben because she discovered that a U.S. operative was involved. Kristina was one of the few agents working under Farah, and now she's the only one left alive. She swears to help Ben finish what Farah started. Meanwhile, Nick is locked up in a room with the agents waiting for orders. Karen walks in, telling Nick he looks just like his mother. He then coldly admits that Farah's biggest mistake was trusting him, implying that he was the one who had her killed. Kristina brings Ben to a hidden safe house with a locked room. The pendant unlocks the door, revealing Farah's secret workspace. Inside, Ben finds a laptop filled with incriminating evidence, documents proving that John Branka had been taking bribes from foreign intelligence agencies. Even worse, his superior, Deputy Director Williams, was involved in Farah's murder. A video shows Farah meeting with Ivy, making Ben wonder if she had been working with him all along. Kristina warns him not to jump to conclusions. Ben calls Branka, saying he has the intel he wants, and Branka offers a trade, Nick for the documents. Kristina warns it could be a trap, but Ben is willing to take the risk. As they prepare for the exchange, Ben struggles with the truth about Farah. Kristina warns that if he hands over the intel, her death will have been in vain. But Ben is determined to save Nick. He sends the files to Desmond for backup before heading to the meeting point. Kristina sets up a sniper position while Ben approaches Branka and his men. Ben hands over the bag, and Branka releases Nick. Just as Ben promises to disappear for good, Branka signals his men to attack. But before they can move, Kristina opens fire, taking out several mercenaries. A shootout erupts, and Ben takes a chance to grab Nick and escape. Branka and Karen chase after them in a car, firing as they go. Ben hands Nick a gun, telling him to defend himself. As the chase intensifies, Ben pulls off a risky maneuver, causing Branka's car to crash. Branka is thrown from the wreck, and Karen is impaled on the windshield. As he lies there, Karen smugly admits to killing Farah. Enraged, Nick finishes him off. With the immediate danger over, Ben knows Branka might still be alive. He tracks him down, and the two men have a brutal showdown. Branka initially gains the upper hand, knocking Ben to the ground. But Ben fights back, landing heavy blows before locking him in a chokehold, rendering him unconscious. Later, one of Branka's own agents arrives to retrieve him, but Ben warns him to walk away and not get involved. Christina meets up with Ben briefly, and he hopes they can work together again in the future. She agrees. With Branka bound and loaded into a car, Ben drives off. Later, he contacts Desmond, and they put together a plan to take down Williams. Meanwhile, Williams is attending an international conference when suddenly, every attendee receives damning intel on their phones. The projector is hacked, displaying all of Williams's crimes. Just then, Ivy walks in with his officers, announcing that it's nice to finally see his enemies on equal footing. He confirms Williams' guilt and orders his immediate arrest. In the end, Ben reunites with Veronique and tells her he's now the French chief of station. Nick smiles, knowing Farah will be proud.